functionality. Yes. These three things are, there to determine how the classroom management takes place. And also because the two sides, the teacher and students are together, the teacher can understand students better. They can know their psychology or learning aptitude and everything, and also the students can know the teacher's style of teaching and her mood, because the teacher's mood tells a lot of things for learners. They can participate in discussion or not. So this is better understandable in face-to-face teaching. And also because the teacher is there as a resource, major resource in the classroom. She can run the classes even low resource situation, or also even no resource, we can say, except the major textbook. So that's also possible. And in face-to-face classes, we've seen that assessment usually are based on tests that happen periodically, and not all homework assignments are graded. So these are a few things that we have been practicing in our face-to-face classes. Now, next, yes. Okay, now let us look at a few things about teaching remotely. What happens? How do they differ from? I'm not going to compare, I'm just going to, describe what is teaching remotely, how does it fare in the classroom, in the delivery. In teaching remotely, learning materials are mainly digital version available online, and also some offline which will be used online or in the course of delivery. And teaching learning is synchronous and asynchronous both. That is, the teacher and students are together, meet together in the real time. But that is less than not meeting in real time, asynchronous, because the teacher will upload things and the students come and download or complete the task there. Or if there are other versions that we are going to discuss later, then again, asynchronous delivery is more practice than synchronous. And in this remote teaching, most tasks are preset. And activities are preset, which are delivered as they are preset. So improvisation is less possible, as in face-to-face teaching. And classroom management is influenced by lesson design as in face-to-face, but also depends upon what kind of technology we are using and how well we can handle that. These things, decide how we manage our classes. And because of the distance and physical, proximity less or no proximity, then teachers, chances of understanding learners is low, and the same applies with the students knowing their teacher. So there's a very, poor chance of, low chance of, building rapport personally. Here, the role of technology in lesson delivery is the key. So we need to decide what technology we're using, how we are using it. And in this, online or remote teaching, we would like to engage learners. So what we do is, every task we set, every activity we engage them in, we try to grade them, although they will be averaged ultimately. So most submissions are graded. This, keeps learners, active or engaged, at least bound to, be participating in the lesson that the teacher is delivering. Next, and then also there are a few other things we need to, think of when we, deliver lessons remotely. Like, in this remote teaching, we can design readings, tasks, and activities depending upon the learners, because they don't actually, in most cases, they don't work together although they might work, collaboratively in groups, but not in the whole class. Then what we can do is we can differentiate the instruction. I mean, slow learners, average learners, and fast learners, or what you categorize them as, these auditory learners or visual learners, So the task can be individualized, so learners can have their own pace, own sort of engagement in the task completion. There's one challenge though. The challenge is because the learners are not with us, because there are no other ways of, engaging them except making our activities, engaging for the learners. The learner motivation is very, very important here. I mean, if they are not motivated, if they do not feel like participating, they can have, lots of excuses. They can come online and then stay, out of the video, or they may just, come and then, ask you something and then get lost. So this learners, if they are self-directed, if they are good at, emotional management, time management, in short, we can say self-management, then it is a lot better, comforting for the teachers. But if our students have a mix of, unmotivated learners, then we really have a challenge to design tasks and activities, so even unmotivated will come and then participate. Another challenge here in this remote teaching is we design tasks and then upload them or send them. Then in case our instructions are not clear, or instructions are phrased in such a way that not everybody understands, then it is possible in lower level of classes, because our instructions tend to be, very academically phrased. Then how will the learners understand? So in this case, first, we need to phrase them simply, and second, we need to be available to explain to them what the task actually is demanding. And then so the same applies with the feedback. We need to give them feedback, so they will feel comfortable in asking again. They will be engaged more. And digital literacy of the learners is very crucial. Plus netiquette, like something that we shared in the beginning, muting and then, behaving, which to put it, in our usual practical sense. So netiquette. Etiquette is you behave with other people when you are physically together in the proximity, but netiquette is in the internet. So we need to teach them, we need to train them on digital literacy and then netiquette as well. And then the contents should be presented in multimodal, for multimode form. For example, text and videos and audios and images, online, offline. So the learners will be engaged in the modality, in the mode that they can they enjoy. And active and frequent participation from everyone, helps the teacher to make the lesson, active and also participating. Because learners, instructors are not on this stage, maybe they really need to think how activity alone, task alone can engage the learners. And then finally, learner training. I stress on this, learner training and follow-up will minimize the learners from getting lost or from a dropout, because these are the issues that we always face in making our online remote teaching successful. For now, these are a few things that I wanted to share. Now Vaishali will share further comparing them.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so Lakshman sir have given you details of it. Let's just try and compare the two, okay? I've listed down 5 things here which kind of stand out as the differences, okay? The first one is related to communication skills, okay? While you're doing remote teaching, there's a wide range of communication skills you need to have. So it's not just speaking skills. There should be a lot of actions so that your learners are engaged. Your expressions, your facial expressions are as important, okay? You need to be audible. So you can't have a very quiet voice, otherwise everyone probably will not be able to hear you. And clear and concise communication is another thing that is very important, okay? Well, face-to-face skills, it requires all of this as well. So kind of, I don't see really a big difference there. It requires both of these skills. It is as important, but probably when you're doing it remotely, it just adds on to the pressure and you need to be able to express it even more. You kind of use these skills even more, okay? In terms of time management, well, in the classroom, when you're doing it face-to-face, you're more in control. You have your planning time, and like it was mentioned earlier, you have flexibility, you can make changes, you're well accustomed to it, you know about it, it's your space, okay? But when you're doing it remotely, it's very intense. You have a short period of time, it can easily slip away, okay? You probably will not be able to make immediate flexibility, immediate changes. If something goes wrong, you probably just have to carry on. It might add to your pressure. So it's really, really intense. In terms of organizational skills, while doing face-to-face, you usually have all your organizations done manually. All your records are kept manually. You have a book, you have a notebook, whatever it is, you have it manually, and you're really habituated to it. But when it is remote, it's usually paperless, okay? And organizations maybe require you to keep all the records online. So you have to have a really nice storage space. It could be a Google Drive, it could be Google Classrooms, it could be any platform that you use, or it could even be simple folders that you have in your computer. But it has to have you have to have a good storage space, okay? So you have to be able to use your calendars, keep your meeting minutes, meeting timings in your head. I mean, all of those you have to be hands-on with all of these organizational skills. You have to be able to use that more often than you would use when you are doing a face-to-face lesson, okay? In terms of computer skills, well, when you're teaching face-to-face, it's not mandatory. You don't have to be tech savvy. You don't have to have that computer skills. But when you're doing it remotely, probably you have to have a bit of computer skills. So maybe you have to have some, knowledge about online platforms, how to use the features. You don't have to use all of the features, but some sort of knowledge about it is very important, okay? And assessment, the last point that was made in the last slide, assessing is difficult when you're doing it remotely. It's not as easy as you do it face-to-face, okay? There are lots of online assessment ideas that you have to have. You should be able to keep records online, okay? And these are different skills than you would need to have face-to-face. And at the end, like I said, we will be sharing you some ideas of how you can assess and evaluate your lessons. And they will also be sharing you further links where you can get more information, okay? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Vaishali, for the comparison. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to touch upon something about, this content that we need to develop for the remote teaching. And then here, I would like to use this metaphor, health metaphor or nutrition metaphor. When we always want to have a healthy body, then we need nutrition. We get nutrition from different kind of foods. And then the food that, cooked differently, they come from different sources and they are eaten differently at different times. And the combination is also different. So then in language teaching, particularly in remote teaching, we need to ensure language nutrition. Okay, we need to, could you please mute your microphone? Okay, so we need to ensure language nutrition. So how does the nutrition come, language nutrition come to the remotely taught learners is, one, we should include and give to the learners extensive reading extensively, and then extensive listening and extensive viewing, so they can read a lot of text, several texts, the texts that are understandable, and then interesting for them, and then they are presented in abundance, and viewing, that is images and videos, and also listening the audios or on the videos. Okay, so this is very nutritious input for the learners to develop their language proficiency. And interactions, when we organize interactions, whenever the synchronous interaction takes place, or maybe asynchronous by writing, then the interactions will be language rich,
everyone.
Different kind of language functions, also they must be content rich. So when it is language rich, the learners will have exposure to, or they'll be practicing words and structures, and songs of language a lot, but they will not do that just without any interesting content. So there must be content. So include language functions and vocabulary and structures, and also content, meaningful content, so the interactions really become meaningful and relate to life. And when you give nutrition to the learners, just a big meal doesn't work. You need to also supply small meals, side meals or some snacks. That is social interactions. So you need to also interact with them socially, not just as a teacher, but as a friend, as somebody who cares for me, kind of attitude you need to show to the learners. Then they complement, social interactions complement what you teach and what they learn. But talking about this selection of the content, keep two things in mind. One, extensive, fine, but they must be comprehensible. Learners need to understand the content that you have presented. And then this comprehensive input by Krashen, makes sense here. Do not make them so simple that they lose interest. Do not make them too difficult that they lose interest. So a little challenging, but keeping the interest for them. And also, they must be available. You cannot give them something out of the blue and then they don't get anything like that from other sources. So they must be available. So plan to collect available materials, but also comprehensible materials, so they will enjoy what you present to them. And again, as in health issue, so you must give them feedback, you must follow them up, so the nutrition will really work to develop their language proficiency. But when I say this language nutrition is not important only in remote teaching and also online teaching, but it is also equally important in face-to-face teaching. You need to do the same thing. Simply the mode of delivery will be different and the form they are presented will be different, but language nutrition is a must. Thank you, Vaisali-ji. You can move on.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
Yes.
So before we move on and start giving you lots of ideas and activities related to online remote learning, let's try and give you a couple of tips. Okay. So on the screen, I've given you about some top tips that people should remember, teachers should remember in order to keep their learners engaged. Okay. You should keep your lessons simple. Like Sir just said, don't give them so much. Give them a little more than what they can do, but keep it simple and keep it engaging. Okay, giving extra focus on short and clear instructions. If you'll end up talking in a 40-minute online class more than you should, you've already lost your learners. Okay, and always remember, when you're talking about young learners in particular, it's just about an attention span of about 3 to 5 minutes. That's it. You have to give them an activity to do in order to engage them. Okay. Next, be yourself. It's okay to make mistakes. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect on a face-to-face lesson. You don't have to be perfect online as well, but just be yourself. Okay. The more you pretend to be somebody else and the more you plan to do more, that's when you create problems for yourself and your students. Okay. Make sure your working space, both virtual, physical, is comfortable. Make sure it's free from clutter. If a couple of you had attended the last webinar, make sure how you use your videos, what you should and shouldn't do. So keep all those things in mind and make sure your working space is free of clutter so that your mind is focused and you can do your lesson well, okay? Set rules for everyone, like we set for ourselves. In a smaller group where you probably just have about 25 or 30 people, it might be easier to set rules and get your students involved in setting rules, okay? That again helps for them to take ownership. Set your expectations right at the start. Maybe at the start of the lesson, you want to let your students know what you're going to focus on today so that they are clear. Features like dress code, all of that is of course very important. So, you know, set rules and follow it yourself as well, okay? Set a community spirit, okay? Ensure that you have group work, small huddles. I mean, there are breakout rooms that you can use in Zoom. Try and ensure that so that your students are not isolated. Remember that first slide that we talked about. Your students can feel isolated. So group work and small huddles, human relationship activities like, you know, getting to know you activities, getting students to talk to each other, interact with each other rather than you asking questions, giving your students a chance to speak. I mean, all of those things are very important when you take an online lesson, okay? If students are not given enough time to speak and interact with each other, that's when they're going to feel isolated and as a result feel demotivated and not engaged. Be with your students, don't be intrusive, don't talk at them, okay? Be with them, facilitate a discussion, put forward a question, get them to engage, put up the question on the screen, get them to talk to each other and find the answer. So it's just about you being with the students. I mean, it's as important in a face-to-face lesson as well, but even more important when you're teaching remotely, okay? Because always remember, there's a tendency that virtual things make people feel isolated. And keep learners from becoming passive observers or listeners, okay? This is something different. We're doing a webinar. We probably are doing most of the talking. You all are listening and observing, but that's not the same when you do your classes online, okay? It's more where you have to just be facilitating, and don't keep your learners as being observers or listeners. Engage them, get them to talk as well, okay? That's very important. It really gets them to engage with the materials. There could be a task up on screen. You can get them to read the task rather than you reading it, for example, okay? So small things like this, but getting your participants and your learners to speak, very, very important when you're doing an online lesson, okay? And of course, somehow my video is not working suddenly, so you're not able to see me, but in a class, it's probably very important to be able to look at the video of your teacher and be able to visually interact with them as well. I'm sorry, my video has suddenly stopped working, but I mean, that's okay. Make sure yours works when you're doing your lesson, okay? Great, let's move on then. Okay, I'm going to run a quick poll for you. I'm going to launch the poll now. There's going to be a couple of questions on your screen. Could you quickly participate in the poll, please? I'll give you about 15, 20 seconds. I'm assuming the poll has come up on your screens. Radha, would you be able to tell me? Okay, yes, yes. People are interacting with them. Cool, okay. We just wanted to understand how familiar you are with various remote teaching platforms. Okay. You've got about 10 to 15 seconds more to give in your answer, please. A lot of you haven't answered. We've just had about half of you who've interacted with the poll. Let's give you a couple of more seconds. Okay, great. Now it's more. Okay, 63% of you interacted. Well, that's okay. I'll probably end the poll now. Okay, great. Let's go through your responses a bit, okay? So it looks like a lot of you, about 66% of you currently teach classes your classes remotely. So which is great. I mean, I'm sure we had never expected this to happen in Nepal, in our context, being asked to teach lessons online. But sadly, the situation has demanded that. And who knows, this might continue for the future as well, okay? But still a lot of you, about 34% of you who haven't yet done it, maybe, I mean, the tips and the ideas in the future, if you have to, will definitely be helpful. Do you like teaching remotely? Well, 64% of you have said yes, that is great, okay? I'm not really, I really don't enjoy teaching remotely, but we often have to, okay? But probably it's okay sometimes. I mean, 34% of you have said it's okay sometimes. I would probably be in that category as well. But a lot of you do enjoy online, okay? So for us who sometimes don't, I mean, these challenges is quite difficult to overcome. But maybe ideas at the end will kind of give you some support, okay? What remote teaching options do you currently use? A lot of you are using Zoom. Great. For all of you who are using Zoom, I think the next webinar, which is on Friday, will actually give you lots of tips on using Zoom effectively. So make sure you register for that. Google platforms, yes, I think the webinar will be talking to you about that as well. Radio, oh, we do have a couple of you who are using the radio, just 8%, but a couple of you, yes. Social media, others. So I do see 6% of you who have clicked on others. Maybe I'd like you, those of you who have clicked on others, it's just about 10 of you. Maybe you would want to use the chat box to tell me what falls under others that you've ticked, okay? So if you could use the chat box to tell me what others mean. 10 of you have pressed others. What other? Voov. Okay, Govind Sharma says Voov. Edmodo. Okay, good. Viber. Okay, well, that would come under the social media. GeoZebra, Moodles. Okay, a lot of, yes, there's a lot of other platforms as well, okay? My only tip for you would be whenever you choose an online platform, please make sure you're aware of the security issues and you don't put yourself and your learners at risk, okay? So make sure you've understood the security issues before you use any online media platform, okay? Great, let's move on then. Okay, so here, there are a couple of other remote teaching options that you can use. For most of you, you've said Zoom. Well, there are other ways in which you can use other platforms that you can use as well, okay? For example, the first one is the telephone. Particularly for Nepal, where learners have limited or no access to the internet, I mean, basic phones can still be a way in which you can support learners. And the link there, don't worry about these links. We will be sending you these links in that email that you get tomorrow, okay? But this link that I've put up there, it actually has lots and lots of ideas how you can use the telephone to interact with your learners. So maybe this is something that is very relevant in our context. The second one is SMS, okay? I mean, written text, it involves a low level of data. It could be online SMSs, it could be offline SMSs, and it requires little or no technical skills. So it could be tasks that you send through SMS. For example, a grammar activity. Write the question on an SMS, send it out to your learners, get them to respond over an SMS, okay? It's a great way of engaging with them. So SMS, again, this link has lots of other ideas where you can use SMS to teach as well. The next one is mobile messenger apps, especially useful when teachers or learners, I mean, they often use internet only on their mobile phones. So this mobile apps can be a great way of engaging with your learners as well, okay? And again, I've put a link there which gives you lots of ideas where you can use messenger apps like WhatsApp, Viber, and how you can use these social media apps to keep your learners engaged. Okay. The next one is Facebook. I mean, I'm sure all of us here use Facebook, and sometimes our secondary learners, I mean, they use Facebook as well, okay? Again, please keep in mind the threats and challenges that was discussed in the last webinar about using Facebook. But if you have all of those things sorted, then Facebook can be a great way of engaging with your learners as well. Again, that link there will give you lots and lots of ideas in using Facebook, okay, to teach. The next one is TV and radio. What we feel is that Facebook and TV, radio, it can sometimes be just one way. So it can be a one-way interaction where you are giving something, especially in TV and radio, and you can't really engage with your learners, okay? But still, when we don't have any option, TV and radio can also be a great way of engaging. We are trying to work in partnership with Cambridge and a couple of other organizations nationally to be able to come up with lesson plans for radio and TV. So once that is ready, we'll of course let all of you know through the NELTA Central Committee. Hopefully that's also going to be helpful for you, okay? Well, then we come to online platforms, the one that is most, I mean, you all said you all use that a lot. In terms of online platforms, inclusion sometimes becomes an issue because we can't engage all our learners. People who have good internet connectivity are the only ones we can engage, okay? So there might be issues with inclusivity and inclusion, but then still you could use online platforms in an engaging way as well. And these links will actually give you lots and lots of ideas in which you can use, there's lots of activities there in which you can use through online platforms, okay? Let me just give a slight glance on the chat because I see a lot of questions. I'm just conscious that they are not questions there. Okay, it's not questions, so rather I'm sure you're keeping track of that. Great, let's move on then, okay? So now there's, like I said, in those links, there will be lots and lots of ideas. I've just picked up a couple which I could share with you, which I thought would really be nice and snappy and engaging for your learners, okay? So the first one, run and find, it would work perfectly with primary children. So that it can be a warmer and energizer that you start your lesson with. So the teacher could say, okay, run and find me something that is yellow. So the students run, get something, come back and show you, okay? You could say, okay, if you're teaching sense organs, go and run and find something that smells really nice. So they run, maybe pick up a flower, pick up an orange, for example. So it could be lots of lexical points that you're actually teaching. And this could be a really engaging way of getting them to engage with you, okay? Where they are running around, it can actually feel like a real lesson. And because they are at home, these objects and things can be easily available to them, okay? The next one, Spider-Man, Superwoman, Batman. I mean, I'm sure my son would love this if the teacher plays this with him. The teacher could take, say words like Spider-Man, and everyone gets up and they shoot and pretend like as if they're doing this spinning webs around, okay? It could be a Superwoman. I mean, you can make up these words yourself, yeah? It could be Batman, and then all the children get up and flash their wings. I mean, I don't know if you're like being able to see my video, but I could actually show you lots of actions if it was, if you were able to see my video, but I think it's not working. But yeah, I mean, these are various, you could adapt this, work things around. This is just an idea that we're sharing, but another way of really engaging and keeping your children engaged, okay? Might work better for primary, but I wouldn't say it wouldn't work for secondary. I mean, you could try it. Maybe your class 6, 7 students would actually also enjoy that. You would just have to pick up words that are relevant to them. Okay. The next one, a graffiti wall. Very easy to do it on Zoom at the end. I mean, let's see if we have time. Maybe I could try something with you all. Maybe you can ask at the end, share your screen with them, share your whiteboard with them, and actually tell them to write a favorite word about the lesson. So how do you think the lesson went? Write one word on the screen, use the annotate button and write one word that you think resembles the lesson, okay? Draw a smile, there's an emote, there's a remote, the button that you can also use that is in your Zoom, the reaction button. So give a thumbs up, give a clap, all these things that you can use, okay? The next one is gestures. For example, in the first one, if I had a group of maybe 30 participants, wasn't possible with 200 of you, but the true and false activity, I could have done it with all your videos on, where you're actually showing me a thumbs up or a thumbs down for the true and false statements, okay? Again, very engaging. They are not writing, so they don't feel stressed. They're actually engaging with you through their videos. So that's a great way of engaging with learners as well. Yeah. And another is mini whiteboards. For this, I'd want, Radha, can you actually see my video or is it not working?
Yes, we can
See,
see
it's
your
working.
video.
Okay,
Yeah.
you can see a video, great. I can't see my own video, so I was thinking it's not working. Great, so for the mini whiteboard, okay, I just wanted to show you, participants can actually, you can get participants to make their own mini whiteboards. I know the Zoom feature has a whiteboard, but if you want your students to actually have a mini whiteboard with them, what you can do is you can get a plastic sheet like this. Yeah, just insert a white blank sheet of paper. Rather, you might have to tell me whether you're actually seeing and it's working, okay? And you might actually use a marker or a felt pen and maybe get them to write things here. Okay, so maybe there's a fill in the blanks on your screen and you want them to write their answer here, okay? So for now, I'm just going to write smile. Is it visible?
A little bit higher, a little bit. Yes.
Okay, great. So maybe you want to make your students get a whiteboard like this. So just a flip paper like this, the plastic sheet with a paper inside, and you can use a felt and get them to write. Okay, maybe you get them to write the answer and they show it to you. Maybe you have a maths problem on your screen, you get them to solve it here and you get them to show you. And they can actually just erase it. They can just use a tissue and erase it. Okay, so this can be a nice way of engaging and interacting with your students as well. Very easy to make it at home. If you want them to draw something and you want to check it there and then, again, this whiteboard can be very useful. Okay, so yeah, so just a couple of things that I picked up. There will be more and more ideas in that links that we have for you, which you can access later. Okay, great. I think that brings us to the end. Maybe we can now over to you, Bhogendra, so that we can take questions.
We have got two questions so far. I'll read out the question first, and then I would like to request all of you, if you have any questions, use the chat box and write your questions. The first question is, I think that is for Lakshman sir. Can we say online teaching is a teacher-centered method?
Okay. Yeah, okay, it all depends. Yes, in the beginning it appears so, but if you can design lessons in such a way that learners get engaged in it, I think you can make it even more learner-centered there, because as I said, it has a possibility of differentiated instruction. You can choose materials, you can choose the tasks for particular learner. That is one way of learner-centeredness. Another is you can engage them a lot in the task and activities. That's another way of engagement. So yes, in this kind of sessions, because we are trying to give you something as introductory, then we seem to be talking, we're really talking, and then we're presenting, and you are there watching us. But it will not happen, as Vaisaliji was earlier saying, in your regular class. Then I think I would say yes in the beginning, but when the teacher gets used to designing the sessions and activities and tasks for the learners to engage them as per their level, then you can actually make it more learner-centered than in face-to-face class.
Thank you, sir. Next question is for Vaisaliji, I think. So, is deep learning possible through online teaching, online learning? Or does it complement deep learning?
Well, I think deep learning is more associated with the way you're teaching. I don't think the platform really matters, okay? If you're doing some just normal training, it's not that face-to-face, all face-to-face teaching ensures deep learning. So deep learning is associated more with the activities that you choose, okay? Rather than just, for example, rather than just putting forward true and false sentences which are mainly close-ended. I mean, it's the type of questions that you choose, it's the type of activities that you give your learners to do. So I think deep learning is more associated with activities rather than online or remote learning, really.
Next question is around making online teaching interesting, but I hope you have already answered this question. Can you summarize how to make online teaching interesting?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I think, well, I did share a couple of activities. Okay, I think for me, whenever I do an online lesson or a webinar as well, very difficult when you do it as a webinar, but when I do smaller groups of training online, I think the main thing that I focus on is to engage my listeners. Okay, if I'm the one speaking, if, for example, if I'm doing a 40-minute lesson over Zoom, and if for the first 30 minutes I'm talking and I'm giving only the last 10 minutes for my learners, I mean, I think I would actually flip it around. And after every 5 minutes of talking, I would ensure that I'm giving something to my learners to do. Okay, so I think that's the way you can really make it engaging, is really to talk less and engage more.
Yeah, related to the same question, I think what is your opinion regarding the success of online teaching in the context of our villages?
Lakshman sir, you could add on to what I would say. Well,
Okay,
online teaching, yeah,
right.
online teaching for sure, it's not inclusive. We wouldn't be able to include all our learners. That's why we are focusing more on remote learning rather than online learning. There could be various other ways in which you can engage with your learners, simply through SMS or the telephone, and not just focus on online, because we know that's maybe not possible for all of us in a Nepali context. Yes, so more to do with remote learning rather than online. Lakshman sir, maybe you want to add something to that?
I think you covered it. I mean, we know our social reality, our economic reality, so it's not always possible in all places with all the learners, but whatever resources we have, whatever, there's tools we have, if we can use, then we can reach out to more learners than we are reaching out now. Now we have a sort of, misunderstanding that remote teaching is simply online, this kind of platforms is not that. You saw so many tools shared just before, so we will not be able to do 100% justice to all students, but we actually can reach out to more learners than we are doing now if we can design our lessons, and then if we can really develop our attitude towards that positive side. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll pick up another important question. So what would be the best way to assess the students after they submit their assignments to keep them motivated during this online teaching?
Maybe I'll start, and Bailaji, you can share. I think one of the things that we practice in Nepal is when we assess, then we use our first guts. We don't have any, particular basis to judge or evaluate what they have submitted. For example, if we can develop rubrics, some sort of parameters to to grade 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever you have the full marks for or grade for ABCD, then that way you can be objective, and then you can share those rubrics with the learners so that they will know what they are expected to be judged for. Okay. So rubrics would be one of the solutions. Maybe, Vaishali?
Yes, I think another way, while a task is being done during the lesson, there could also be ways of evaluation. For example, thinking about the true and false activity, okay? Rather than me giving you the answers, probably I could have sent the answers to one of the students privately over the chat, and that student could actually check the answers for the whole class. Okay, so there could be various ways of engaging your students as well while engaging. Your students might submit your lesson or email it to you or send a picture over Viber. You could actually do some peer learning as well. Get them to exchange it with each other, get them to do some quick correction, come back and they actually show you, they maybe correct it on the paper, they actually show it to you like this. So that you could actually do various peer correction as well in online teaching, like you would do in face-to-face, okay? So it's a lot of engagement that you can do even during a lesson. Just think of it as being a face-to-face platform with just a screen in between, really. Yeah, but in one of one of the links that I've sent you, you would get a couple of ideas for that as well.
Thank you. There are a couple of questions around teaching online to primary students. How can we make online teaching effective for the students of primary level? Please suggest some practical ways to engage them.
I think my best suggestion would be to register for the webinar, which is happening on 29th May. That webinar is totally focused on how to engage primary learners using online materials. So 29th May, I think that will be a session for you, whoever's asked that question.
Next question is it better to have a small group on online teaching?
Lakshman sir, what do you think?
Yes, yes. I think that's if we can manage a small group is better, because we also realize that in our university teaching in Gatman University, I mean, when we want to have a conversation like this, or back and forth question answer, then one teacher can handle maximum 20 students at a time. So in these kind of platforms, but if we are using text messages or Facebook Messenger and others, and if it is asynchronously, then I think the number doesn't matter. But it matters, but you can perhaps handle more students than you do at the same time. But smaller is better. Yes.
Yeah, I think I agree. Maybe a group of 15 to 20. If you have a class of 30 students when you're doing face-to-face, I would recommend that you divide them into group A and group B with 15 students each, and you're just repeating the same lesson to the next 15 people. There could be tasks that you give them together as a group, like an SMS task that is sent out together to all 30 students, a Viber task that is sent to all 30 students. But when you're interacting with them, it could be a group of 15, group A and group B, and you just have to repeat the entire session. I think that would make it much more engaging.
Mm-hmm. So another question is around I think this is the last question, I guess. How to create poll in Zoom? So many participants have asked this question.
That's a technical question. Yes.
Yes. Well, I'll give you briefly, but then the next session, next webinar on Friday is actually a lot more related to the technical aspects of these platforms. But when you are hosting a Zoom meeting, if you are the host, you can actually see a poll button, and you can get, you will have access to creating polls. Not everyone can create polls. You have to be a host to be able to create it. But probably the technical details of online platforms, you'll get it more from our speakers on Friday.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I think time is over, and then you have already answered almost all the questions.
Okay, can I do a quick, I don't know if it's going to be possible. Okay, I'll try. I really wanted to try this with everyone so that we get some sort of a screenshot of it at the end as well. I'm going to share a blank, sorry about that. I'm going to share a blank screen with y'all. I want you all to use your annotate button, and rather than scribble something, maybe you can use a stamp, a smiley, or whatever stamp you can see. Think about the lesson today and try and give us some virtual reactions. A word that comes to you. I mean, let's just evaluate today's session, okay? You can now use your annotate button. Is everyone able to use their annotate button?
No, madam, no. I think we are not allowed to use. Host must
Oh,
use
let me.
It's missing. It's
Security
missing
issue.
actually.
Now you can.
Oh, okay.
Now you can. Small figures. There's 225 of you trying to use it. Small figures. Yes, scribbling is not allowed. Good. Scribbling is not allowed. Just to give you, I just wanted to do this to give you a feel of how you can get your students to evaluate it as well. Evaluate your own lesson as well at the end. Yeah? Thank you so much. It's so fun for us. Imagine how engaged your learners would be. Okay?
Oh, okay.
Great.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for us. We're taking back Lakshman sir and me. I'm sure Lakshman sir, we would take this back as a very colorful response.
Yes,
right?
that's a good graffiti. Yes.
Yes.
We are really
Okay.
very grateful to you both.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
very
Thank
much,
you so
Clara.
much.
Thank you
Okay,
very much,
thank
sir.
you.
Stop
Thank you.
my
Thank you so
screen
much.
now.
So-
Thank you,
We'll see you
sir.
again.
Thank
The
you.
whole team.
Really
Uh,
interested and great.